everybody, and welcome to Inspire Me Monday. I'm Allison Cope, and I'm your hostess today, and we are going to make a pull-out greeting card today. This technique works for any theme, of course, but being December and always needing just one more Christmas card, I thought we would do a holiday theme. So today I'm using our gorgeous frosted gingerbread from Power Poppy, of course. And I have already colored and cut out my image, all ready to go. We're going to use the cute little gingerbread house, and let's get started on our card. So to begin our card, we're going to start with our card base, and this is relatively easy. This is almost an A2 size card. What I've done is taken the fold and actually made it have two joints, so it actually has some thickness accounted for on the end. Because we're going to be using dimensional adhesive, we need a little bit of thickness in our card to account for the thickness of our tape. So that's why we've basically taken and made that fold extra large. Now, this is the weird part about this card. To make it actually easier to make, we're actually going to put the fold of the card at the bottom of the card. Now, this card doesn't actually open per se like a traditional card would, but you could create it so that this part of the card is maybe the front focal panel, or put a panel on the back, or put a smaller card that opens on the back to ensure that you have space for your greeting. So we're going to start by adding our three-dimensional adhesive, and we're going to start by going down both sides of the card. I am going to put adhesive down towards the fold just to ensure that we maintain that thickness, but that's the only purpose for the adhesive at that point. Now, we need to leave a certain amount of gap open because we're actually going to have a piece that slides inside this kind of boundary. But we need to first know the thickness of the band that needs to be pulled out the top of the card. So at this point, I'm just going to leave this open. We will come back and add more of our foam adhesive here, but we need to figure out those dimensions first. So let's do that. So for my basic card, I have a front panel that I've already added all of my basic elements of dimension. Now for this card, I would recommend that you keep things relatively flat. Don't put anything three-dimensional that wouldn't allow your item to be moved, and you'll understand why as we proceed here. But make sure that you measure this. This is no longer the same size of an A2 card. It is slightly smaller, so make sure you measure before you go and cut your panel. But my panel is done, and we're going to adhere that to the front. But you also need a panel that is going to move. So I designed this one here, and we're just going to adhere our cute little gingerbread to the front. And I like to put lots of adhesive. Make sure that our little house here stays nice and flat. And this will become our focal panel on the front. And this is going to actually not quite attach, but it is actually going to be placed on the front like such. Now, what's going to happen is this piece is going to move up to reveal a message that's underneath. And that's where the pocket inside comes in to play, because it's going to be seen through a hole, and that's something that we have to do now. So what we need to do is adhere the front panel really, really well to that card front before we go and cut. Because if you cut it first, it makes it really hard and awkward to try and cut the front panel. So by adhering everything really nicely and really firmly, then it saves us a lot of heck. Okay. Make sure that you use a fair amount of adhesive on this, because we don't at this point know where our hole is going to be. Put a fair amount of adhesive across this panel just to ensure that any edges around that particular shape are going to be adhered well. Give it a good press. Now remember, we haven't adhered this together, so it's still free form. Okay, there we go. Lots of adhesive, and it's going to be stuck down. This is where we need to look at our panel, because we want to hide the hole behind the panel. And that's why I made my panel a little bit larger than maybe you might traditionally make it. But we need to hide it behind this shape. So we could actually go back to the same die set. This is the die that I actually used to cut out my white shape. Now we could actually go to the die that fits on the inside, and that's a perfect way to ensure that you know this is going to be covered, because obviously this shape is smaller than our focal shape. To help guide us, I think what we'll do is we'll pull in a pencil here, and it's not going to hurt because you can erase this. We're just going to ensure that we don't go past these lines. I hope you can kind of see the pencil line there. So it's my guideline to where we're going to put our shape here. Now, the other thing that you have to be aware of is what size is the sentiment that is going to be underneath. Can you see it in that hole? So we're going to actually put the gingerbread houses and sweet smelling things, savor the joy the holiday brings. We're going to put that in, and you know what? It fits perfectly. So I know that that size of hole will work for what we're looking for. So I'm going to actually use a little bit of washi tape, and I'm going to just temporarily tack this down to the front. I'm going to take it to my die cutting machine, making sure that this is open. Now you're going to have to be careful. You can only put through the card front because your foam adhesive is there, but that's all right. I probably could have waited on the foam adhesive, but you know, live and learn. So I'll be right back. So we have now removed our panel on the front of our card, and our focal panel, see, it completely covers up our opening, and that's exactly what we want. Let me go back to state. Be careful how many layers you put. Dies are pretty good about cutting 2 layers, sometimes 3, but that's pushing it for some dies. And I had a little bit of problem just with the base because I actually have 3 layers of paper in this spot. So good old trusty craft knife comes in handy too. So we're all ready to go for our next step. The next thing we need to think about is our sentiment. Now, of course, I have a red card base. And yes, you could use white embossing powder and emboss a white sentiment, but in order to make things a little bit easier to read, let's put in a piece of white paper so that we have something to stamp on. Now, I just randomly went in and measured my gap, leaving a gap at the top for more of my foam adhesive, which we will eventually put in, and just slipped in the piece of paper that fit in my void. Now, with my paper being in there, I'm just going to help myself out, and I'm just going to trace my inner shape so that I know basically how I'm going to center my sentiment. It's just giving me a guideline, and I'm going to use the same gray flannel ink that I used to stamp my gingerbread house. And I'm going to make sure my sentiment is facing the right direction. And I would position this particular item towards the bottom of your hole. Not towards the middle and not towards the upper part. Okay, and there we go. So I'm going to wait for that to dry, and then I can erase my pencil marks. Once that is done, I'm going to take this and I'm going to adhere it inside my card. On to the next step, making the pull. All right, now we need to make the mechanism that takes our gingerbread out of the way so that we can read the sentiment on the inside. So the first step is to measure the width between your two pieces of 3D adhesive. Everybody's adhesive is not necessarily the same width, so this is why I'm going through the whole process, because not everybody has the same adhesive that I do. So mine is approximately 3.5 wide. Now I'm also going to take the depth of my pocket, and mine is 5 1/16. Those are my measurements that I need to know. And I am going to use the cherry cobbler cardstock that I use for my card base so that it all looks the same. So let's go and make our piece. To make this easier, let's make a full piece of paper. We are also needing to add a little bit of paper to our depth because our pull needs to come out and be at the top. So we need to add a certain amount of paper that sticks out the top. So I'm going to actually add, let's say, 1/2 inch. So our full piece of paper needs to be 5, for my particular card, of course, and 9/16. Okay. So 3.5 wide. And 5 9/16, which is basically one more tick mark past 5.5. So this piece of paper now will fit completely into my void, which it does, and it sticks out the top, which is exactly what I wanted. And it's okay if it shifts, because we're actually going to minimize this. And let me show you how. With my piece of paper now inside my pocket all the way to the bottom, so I cannot push it in any longer, I'm going to use a pencil registration mark to show the bottom of my hole. Now, so I'm going to make a tab by cutting off. We're going to leave some paper down. It's going to look like an upside down T. We're going to cut in and up, but we want to make sure that we have enough cardstock on the inside of the gap, just so that if you peek under the top, it's not going to show. So let's do that. And I'm going to put 1/2 inch of tab at the bottom, and I'm going to go in 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut, well, maybe not quite 1/2 inch. I'm going to back off by 1/8. So my piece now looks like an upside down T. And the reasoning for the T is that we don't want this thing to go missing. It won't with the attachment on it, but we're also going to use our foam tape and add it to that space right there, just so our T will not be able to come out. It won't be able to come out because of our attachment of this, but anyway, it won't be able to come out regardless. Now, before you go and attach anything or put this inside, if you wish to corner around these pieces or put a sentiment at the top, do so now while your paper is all free and ready to go. Okay, So I am going to actually do that, and I'm going to put our sweet holiday wishes at the top. So in my getting ready to stamp my sentiment, I realized that my little cutout panel would fit perfectly on the top. So what a great way to use something that maybe you might have thrown away. I mean, I could have used it on another card, but why not? It matches the card perfectly. So I adhered it to the top of my slider panel. And now we're going to firm him in and make sure that he sits in there properly. So I'm going to bring in my trusty dusty foam tape here, and let's actually cut this off at a right angle. So making sure that that piece is all the way to the bottom and centered where it should go. I'm trying to keep it relatively tight to the edge of that slider so that it does stay in one position and doesn't jiggle around too much. So the premise is that it's going to move up, and of course it can't slide any farther than that anyway now, but this is also going to limit the amount of slide it has. The next thing we need to do is adhere this down. So make sure that you have your sentiment done, that this is decorated because it's just easier to do, and we're going to peel off all the backer pieces on our foam tape. Now it is secured in there. It's not going anywhere but up. Now we need to attach this little fella, because what happens as you pull this up with this attached, it moves up as well. Now it looks as if when I do pull mine up, and I can tell just by looking, see the word wishes is going to be tucked underneath. But, you know, whatever. This is why I always create along with you guys, because you'll see my boo-boos and you'll be able to fix them. Now, I could have avoided that by making a mark on the top and stamped a, number one, a smaller sentiment, which would have worked, and right below that edge so it wasn't peeking up. Okay, now we need to adhere this panel to this panel, and we're going to make sure that that's in position. Make sure it's all the way at the bottom, and you're actually going to attach it using the same foam adhesive. I would actually take the foam adhesive and put it to the tag. Don't try to do it this way, you'll never get it centered. And it only can be adhered towards the bottom, because if you put tape up here, it means that this thing is not going to slide. So keep your foam tape towards the bottom. Center your image on your card front. Give it a press. And there we go. It says sweet at the top. What we can do is put the remainder of the sentiment maybe on a little bit of vellum. We'll figure something out. Or maybe I can stamp it and put it at the bottom. That's how, I tell you guys, sometimes my stuff doesn't work out either. But you know what? Live and learn. And so we also have another problem. See, I can't see my whole sentiment. Oh boy. Oh, the joys of card making when it doesn't work for you. But you know what? Ha! I have the magical tools of scrapbooking. It's called scissors. And I will aim. I think I may have to cut this out in pieces. We'll get it out of there. See? Live and learn, people. Live and learn. Oh, I kill myself some days, I swear. Okay. Dun, da, da, da. This is not pretty, people. I don't know who's getting this card, but I don't know. All right. So there we go. We have sort of fixed it. I will put the remainder of the sentiment. Sorry, this bugs me when stuff sticks out like this. It still won't hurt the integrity of the card. Because those flaps are in there and they're not going anywhere. Okay. Oh, choice. And there we go. So I will put the rest of my sentiment, I think, down here. And I think we're pretty much good to go. And so just a review. When making your slider part, we're going to make sure that it is not the length. Don't make it any longer than where the window sits. So when you do your T, measure from the top. I put a 1/2 inch at the top, and then measure your T to the bottom of the window. So I would actually put your foam adhesive along the bottom so that your foam sits right below your window. So learn from my mistakes and make your T a little shorter. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you laughed along with me. I hope you learned something new. And I hope that you experiment with your card making as well. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.